Hi guys, even at its original price, the camera that you are looking at right now has a very, very strong argument that it is the best value video camera on the market today. When you factor in the temporary price reduction of $200, the FX30 has reached no-brainer territory. Let's talk about it. So first I want to say you may want to check the link to make sure this amazing price is still happening and that the camera is not in fact sold out everywhere, because I'm pretty sure this is going to sell out everywhere. I am thinking of getting a second one. This is my own personal one right here. I call him Felix. I am borrowing the one that you are looking at right now because I wanted to shoot footage with it while showing the camera itself. So why am I thinking about picking up another FX30? It's just this camera is not only so capable in almost every situation, never have I enjoyed using a camera for video more than the FX30. This thing is designed for work. It is just fantastic to use when it comes to video. I mean, it takes photos too. We'll talk about that at the end, but of course, we're going to focus on video with the FX30. There is simply nothing like this camera on the market when you consider the features, the layout, the ergonomics, and the price. And not just the price for the body itself. Because this is an APS-C size sensor, you can get some fantastic APS-C lenses that are generally much lower cost than full-frame lenses. It's not an absolute, but in general, the APS-C lenses are not only smaller, they are also cheaper, but can still give you absolutely amazing quality. And of course, you can still use full-frame E-mount glass, use your G-Masters, do what you will, but you have the option with this guy. Right now, I am shooting on a $350 lens, the Sigma 16mm f1.4, the best value lens on the planet, in my opinion, for all of the systems. This competes very mightily with my 24mm G-Master when I use that on full frame cameras. I've done many comparisons on the channel. If you don't believe me, you can just watch them for yourself. Fantastic lens, $350. They also have this 15mm from Sony, which is about double the price of that 16mm from Sigma. But then you have, the buttons, the dials, the aperture ring, and you have the better stabilization when you factor in that the Sony electronic stabilization works better with the native lenses. Plus, look at this, small, compact, so great for gimbal use. So you can use this camera as this tiny little compact setup, or stick on the optional XLR handle, have professional quality microphones going right there into your camera. Look at this, and I stuck a little matte box from Small Rig on. Now, my little tiny lightweight setup has become much more of a pro looking setup, huh? Impressing the clients? I think so. Of course, you can trick this out so much more. You can put it on rails. You can do whatever you want with the body of this camera, but you don't even need a cage. Let's talk about that for a second. You see, all around the body, it has these 1/4 threads, so you don't need to actually put a cage on. You can, and I certainly do at times, or you can just screw things right in. There's here one on the side here as well, and one on the other side. So there's so many mounting points for this guy if you want to keep your setup small and compact. And with that small, compact setup, you're going to want a nice grip, and this is the best grip in the entire Sony lineup, in my opinion. It feels so comfortable. Look at this grip. It is so deep. It is so nice. You can just hold this all day long. Really love the grip on the FX30. It's the same one on the FX3 because they have the same body, but here it is on my little FX30. It's got this zoom rocker right here. I love that. If you have a power zoom like the Sony 10-20 f4, you can just hit that little zoom rocker, zoom in and out without having to touch the lens at all or any other buttons on the camera. Of course, it's got a little fan here, so you're not going to get any overheating. I have run this thing on 4K 120. We'll talk about that in a minute. 4K 120 just endlessly until my cards run out all of the time. There is no overheat warning. There is no overheating on this camera for me in any circumstance at all. That fan is a great peace of mind, and here is another great peace of mind, and that is the 2 card slots. Because when you're doing pro work, which this camera is designed to do, it's footage a lot of times that you simply cannot lose. So to have a backup recording, to have 2 card slots recording simultaneously is absolutely fantastic. It is essential for a lot of people. A card, certainly it can corrupt. You can also lose it. It can break. It can disintegrate. That has been happening to me on some of my cards. I've actually switched to Sony Tough cards because some of my other cards just fell apart in my hand because I've used them and abused them for years and years. But the fact is, if I had had a second card that did not disintegrate, that would have been great. But I lost that footage on some of those shoots when I had cameras that only had one card slot. You really want the 2 card slots if people are paying you money. And you have a full-size HDMI right there. Full-size HDMI is so much better when you are working with external monitors, which you often like to do when you're using pro equipment. So using that full-size HDMI, being able to plug it in and out without worrying about the finicky, fragile little ports of the micro HDMI, which are on a lot of cameras, even some fairly expensive cinema cameras still have micro HDMI ports for some reason, so it is very welcome to have a full-size HDMI port. Of course, it's got the fully articulating 360-degree LCD, and this LCD is no joke. It is 2.36 million dots, which is a welcome addition to a Sony camera. A lot of the Sony cameras, their LCD is not great, in my opinion, but this one, 2.36 million dots. So even if you're out in bright, sunny weather, you can see this screen, you can compose your image, which is great because it doesn't have an EVF. So to have a very high resolution LCD is really, really good. You talk about the button layout and the usability of this camera. Oh my goodness. Now, first of all, check this out. Here is a big old red record button. And when you press that button, you get, and yes, I know I have a lens cap on, but still, it's for the demonstration. You can see one tally light, you can see another tally light, and then if you have the screen open, even though it's recording just the back of the lens cap, it's just a red ring around. And this record button is also here on the front if you want to have another record button. You see that? Just so easy. You know it's on. Your talent knows it's on. The amount of times I've recorded, a camera that doesn't have a tally light and just not recorded it when I thought I did, looking like a total boob. But there's so much more. Look at the buttons up on top. You got your ISO, you have your white balance right there at the touch of a button. And right here is a little joystick so you can move your focus point around. And look at the back right here. You don't see this on many mirrorless cameras. You get your peaking, you get your zebra. This is a shutter. You can lock your shutter right here. Of course, you can customize the buttons to whatever you want, but I don't. I just leave them in their default because they are set up so well to work right out of the box. Now, before I get into a few more of the features that I love about this camera, we should talk about the autofocus. You shouldn't just gloss over the autofocus. We all know Sony has good autofocus, but just a few years ago, pros would never trust autofocus in a critical situation, whereas now you can actually trust the camera's autofocus. The tracking on this thing, the eye autofocus, if you're doing a wedding videographers, you could just track a bride or a groom, just tap on them and it will stick to them like glue. It is just so reliable and so fantastic, and it just can't be overstated how good that is for peace of mind when you're shooting your video, to know that your subject is always going to be in focus. And if you're hand-holding this bad boy, the stabilization is also quite good. The active stabilization in Sony has gotten very good over the years, and I am very comfortable using the active stabilization only in the FX30. Now, if you want that extra bit of stabilization to make it gimbal-like without using a gimbal, of course you can use a gimbal with this guy, but if you don't want to use the gimbal, you can run it through Catalyst Browse, Catalyst Prepare, or the free program GyroFlow, and you can get gimbal-like footage without a gimbal because this thing records gyro data to the SD card, so you can go smooth out your footage at a small crop. Something else that you can do from this camera is stream directly from the USB-C 1080. So it's not 4K like the A6700, and I do like streaming in 4K. However, 1080 is usually what people are still streaming in these days, and you can do that straight from the camera. Now, of course, you can connect a capture card, do a Camlink 4K, do the Rode Streamer X, whatever you want to do. You can make it a 4K stream by using the HDMI port, but you can still stream 1080 directly from the camera. So let's talk about a few more of those features that put it in perspective how good this is for the price, especially now, the reduced price. You go 4K 60, up to 4K 60 with no crop, of course, 10-bit, 422, you get all that color information. You can shoot an S-Log3 color grade to your heart's content, but you could also do 4K 120. It does come in at a 1.5 times crop, but that doesn't stop me. I use it all the time. 4K 120, I am happy to have it. You just factor in the crop factor and you are good to go. It is still a good looking 4K. You definitely do want to have enough light. If you're running out of light, you're going to start to get some grain and some noise in your footage at 4K 120, but as long as you have enough light, the image looks absolutely fantastic. You have that new Sony touchscreen menu. You have the Cine EI menu, which a lot of pros are used to using, and a lot of people who want to get into pro work will definitely want to get accustomed to. It also outputs 16-bit linear RAW over HDMI, so if you're someone who wants to shoot RAW, change your white balance later in post, let's say, you can do it with the FX30. If you don't want to shoot in RAW, you can still have a bevy of codecs in here. You can do the all-I if you want. That's usually overkill for me. I don't go all-I, but you certainly can. The files will be a little bit bigger. You can shoot DCI 4K and get true 4K, so if you're trying to match other cinema cameras, there you go. Right in here you can do it. This thing can also have anamorphic de-squeeze right in the camera, 1.33 and 2 times squeeze, so that is great. When you're looking at your footage, you put on an anamorphic lens, then you can see what your footage looks like when it's de-squeezed. Has dual native ISOs of 800 and 2500 when you're in log, so when light starts to get a little bit lower, you can switch over to that 2500 and the image will clean up. This thing is good in low light for an APS-C camera. It is not an FX3. It's not a full frame Sony camera, so you can't expect miracles, but I have never had an issue with this camera in low light, and I've taken it out in plenty of low light situations. It's got focus mapping and it has focus breathing compensation, which works well with a lot of the Sony lenses. So you want to use a fancy G Master that has lots of focus breathing, don't worry about it. The FX30 has you covered. Now, while many people consider the photos an afterthought for this camera, it can still take fantastic pictures. 26 megapixels. I have always loved the photos coming out of the FX30. It doesn't have a mechanical shutter and it can only take one photo at a time, so you do have to be aware of that. However, I really like using this as a photo camera. I've taken lots of portraits with it. I've taken lots of behind the scenes when I am shooting something, because sometimes it's the only camera I have with me, and the photos, they come out great. And a lot of times I like to use it for these YouTube videos. So my thumbnails for the videos are often taken by the FX30. Looks fantastic. People can't tell the difference between my A6700 photos and my FX30 photos because they have the same sensor. While of course we're always talking about the FX30 as a video camera, as we should, know that when you do take photos, you are going to like them. Now, I could talk about the features literally all day about this fantastic camera, but here is what I will tell you from my own personal use. I pre-ordered this when it was announced, and I have used it ever since. And when it comes time for me to shoot a video, if it's just up to me, I always grab the FX30. It is just the easiest camera to use, the easiest camera to set up. It just gets me up and running, and I can rely on it in almost every situation that I am in. I absolutely love it, and I think I've convinced myself to get a second one now that it is on sale. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. Let me know down below if you have an FX30, if you're interested in an FX30. If you are not, let me know what camera you are interested in, and we'll have a nice little discussion about it. Thanks for watching this. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.